Now we're on to Josh. Josh Viers from who heads the citrus group out of Merced, and I'll turn it over to you, Josh.
Great. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. Yeah, we're up and running. Name's Josh Viers. Contact information's there. Campus director for citrus at UC Merced. Sometimes we get the question, UC or what? Where is UC Merced? So we're the 10th campus of the University of California system. Opened our doors in 2005. In the last 15 years, we've grown from 500 students to almost 9,000. We just finished the largest ever public-private partnership in higher education with a $1.3 billion build out. So where you see the cows is no longer pasture. There's 13 new buildings, all LEED certified. So we're in a position of very rapid growth. Our tagline is building the future in the heart of California. So if you know our story, you know that we were put in the San Joaquin Valley for a purpose. And part of that is bringing science technology to a place that desperately needs it. Most recently, we were part of a consortium that's called the Fresno Merced Future Food Innovation Corridor. So that's providing a couple $1 million from Governor Newsom's budget to start up an innovation corridor in partnership with Fresno State, UC Ag and Natural Resources, as well as the Central Valley Community Foundation. And that would be from production to processing to consumer in all phases, and industry university research consortium around that. This consortium will have a focus on small farmers. That was one of the comments that came up in the sidebar discussions, in part because we recognize those are dirty, dangerous jobs for low wages, and we want to get people out of harm's way. We see a lot of opportunities around regenerative agriculture and climate smart farming, more effectively being able to create sensors for carbon and cash, empower all sectors of the farming industry, not just the specialty crops. Where we see academic research fitting into this is across a number of different domains, from the field and scaling up from the farm to the district and the region. And ultimately, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the systems integration. I feel the universities are great test beds and also validators. We focus a little bit on the knowledge creation, of course, but there's the opportunity to scaffold these ideas to industry. We've heard a little bit about the IoT approach, and obviously very heavy on the robotics, but these CyberPhysical Systems are things that can bring in disciplines outside of agriculture, as you know, and a real focus on data science and AI, remote sensing, predictive analytics, and so forth. So I'm just going to give a taste of what my lab has been focusing on. So in partnership with Stefano and his robotics team, we've been flying UAVs around ET and orchards and vineyards specifically. This is one of those cases as a test bed, being able to use off-the-shelf commercial software and hardware that a farmer might have, in this case, DJI M600 with the MicaSense Red Edge camera, and being able to validate some ET products. Here it's a Chardonnay vineyard just outside of Madera, not far from Merced. And this graph just showing the applied water in blue. So as you know, they tend to get things wet early in the season to kind of ramp things up, and then deficit irrigation for the most part throughout the growing season, and then some significant wet up events at the end of the growing season to prep the vines for overwintering. I think it's worth noting the big the irrigation events in September. This is post-harvest, and it has some implications for the ET estimates. Here, this graph is just showing a juxtaposition for UAS, unmanned aerial system based ET estimates, which are shown there in the red and blue, versus two remote sensing products from satellites in the green and purple, and very high distributions, a lot of variance from those satellite products, in part because of the mixed pixels from the soil and so forth. And what we were able to show is that by using a canopy model from being able to do the stitching and validated with a LiDAR system, that we can actually isolate the pixels that are used then in a transform function to be able to estimate ET, and notice that it tails off after harvest and leaf senescence and reduction in the actual leaf area index of the plant, whereas the purple continue with high variance, but this is also very high air temperature period that compromised the estimates, as well as the saturated soil conditions that were giving very hot reflectance. So the heat balance approach to ET estimates were a little bit compromised because of that. So for us, this is an example where students can plug into this pipeline and systems integration, be able to do some data validation, and then ultimately coordinate some of this at the farmer level with some of the more commercial products that are available out there. In the end, most of these estimates were pretty close to each other. Again, the kind of the reduced deficit irrigation in vineyards is pretty well identified. Total applied irrigation was 2.8 feet. You know, so that was very much in line with what's going on out there. But another study that we did over the course of 2 growing seasons looked at 7 different models across the Delta with a number of different commodities, and that the results of that study indicated that even using our best techniques and best available data, that we're about 15% within each of these estimates. And if you were to scale that to California, that results in about 4.5 million acre feet of uncertainty, which is the equivalent of our largest reservoir in Lake Shasta. So we feel that evapotranspiration is still one of those areas that deserves a lot more inquiry, and we feel that, you know, the universities are well positioned to do that. So again, UC Merced trying to integrate across these different domains, both disciplinary and scalability wise, and bring some of these new features to our academic learning environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Super. Okay, thank you. And now let Stavros, if you have a question for Josh, then in the meantime, I'll share my screen.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great talk and a great vision. I guess one of the questions is data, and you know, there is a lot of data that's going to be and is already generated by all the machinery. How do you envision processing those data? Would it, you know, it belongs to the farmer, it belongs to the service provider, they share it. You know, what kind of different models could you see there for utilizing the data, but also for, you know, processing them and handling them from a technology point of view?
Yeah, that's a great question, Stavros, and I think there are a lot of competing models out there, and I suspect some of the larger industry partners already have designs on being able to retain rights to those data that they collect over time, and certainly leverage them in their own models. That being said, I would take a step back and basically look at one of the biggest problems we have with rural broadband is, you know, being able to actually transmit those data effectively, you know, to the cloud and beyond. And so I suspect a lot of research will be on more localized networks and being able to stand up ephemeral, you know, data telemetry that's used on site at a given time for a given purpose. To my knowledge, you know, that's largely been the domain of the military. But I suspect that breakthroughs in that area will be coming to agriculture soon.